Welcome to the Vertigo Recovery Doctor. I'm Dr. Kevin Smith. I'm a vestibular physical therapist, and I'm going to talk about how to get the most out of vertigo therapy or vestibular rehab. Now, vestibular rehab is a lot like brewing coffee. Now, stick with me here. We are going to be talking about vertigo, but I like coffee, so we're going to go with this. Now, if you are trying to make a good cup of coffee, it all comes down to that grind size, how fine you're grinding the coffee or how coarse you're grinding the coffee on what the ending brew comes out to be like. So if you are making the front grind too fine and you're pouring that water through, and the water's going to choke. The flow is not going to go through the water. It's going to sit in those grounds a little too long and extract the wrong flavors. It's going to end up tasting bitter and just get all those gross flavors in there. It's not going to taste good, right? Now, if you grind it too coarse and the water flows through too quickly, then you're going to get this sour cup of coffee. You didn't get enough of that flavor out of there. It's going to be thin. It's not going to taste good either. Now, if you get the right grind size, it's going to taste delicious. You kind of dialed it in. You got the right grind size, the right flow. The water went through at the appropriate time. And the coffee is going to taste great, which is what we all like to have as good tasting coffee, right? Now, the reason I bring up this analogy is because that's what vertigo therapy is like, what vertigo or vestibular rehab is like. If you do too much, if you go too fast with the exercise, if you do too many of the exercise, you overwhelm the brain. So that's kind of like the, grinding too fine, too coarse, going too hard with the exercises. The brain gets overstimulated. It can't process all that information correctly, and you end up just not adapting, right? So that's what the goal is of vestibular rehab or vertigo therapy, is to get your brain to adapt and to change. We're looking for neuroplasticity. So if you do too much, it's just not going to work. So if you do too little, you're not stimulating the brain enough. You're not challenging it to drive that neuroplasticity, to make those changes. You have to give the brain a challenge. So that would be like grinding too coarse with the coffee and the water's flowing through too fast. It's not enough to make a change. So you have to find that sweet spot, and it takes a lot of dialing it in. When I get new bag of beans for making a cup of coffee, the first cup isn't perfect, right? And so I never judge it on the first try and say, oh, this bag of beans is terrible, and throw it out the window. No, I give it another shot. I try a different grind size. I play with water temperature. I change the minerality of the water that I'm using. Yes, I get real detailed into my coffee making, but the same thing needs to happen with vestibular rehab. You don't just say, oh, vestibular rehab didn't work for me because maybe you didn't do enough of it, right? Or maybe you did too much and you're like, oh, I feel terrible with doing those exercises. You got to dial it in, right? So you got to, okay, maybe that was too much. Maybe I had too much symptoms after doing those exercises. Okay, well, let's do a little bit less next time, right? Or, vestibular rehab, or some people say, okay, vestibular rehab didn't work for me. Well, did you do enough of it? Because there is kind of that therapeutic amount that's going to actually make a change, make a drive with your impairments that you have. So my encouragement to you is, don't just give up on vestibular rehab. Don't give up on vestibular therapy. If you had a bad experience going through it, or if you notice no change, you do have to have some patience with it and have a little bit of motivation to make changes, to dial it in, to do a little bit less or a little bit more, depending on where you might fall with that, so that your brain has a challenge, but it's not too overwhelmed. It doesn't get overstimulated. And if you're looking for a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance to get through this, to learn how to do that appropriately, to learn the best exercises, that's why I'm creating my membership. And you can go to vertigorecoverydr.com/membership to learn more about that if you would like help getting ready for vertigo. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below or reach out to me. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.